Here we go with the first pack. We are drafting Zendikar World Wake, and we have Verdant Catacombs as the rare, which is worth quite a bit of tickets. It also fits perfectly into the strategy I'm trying to draft. It's definitely worse than a card like River Boa, also Hideous End being a good removal spell, but it's somewhat of a good card with landfall, and the tickets just make it worth it to pick it, which is something I do whenever I draft these offbeat formats or old school drafts. You can't rare draft in Cube, but you can in Zendikar World Wake. Next up, we have another Blazing Torch, which can be used to shoot 2 damage. I think it has been reprinted, so you probably know that card. This is good when your opponent plays artifacts. You can get a 4/4 beast token. It's also good to ambush another creature for 5, but it's not too amazing. There's some landfall cards here to get creatures back from your graveyard or search for lands. These are not among the most powerful cards in the format, though. I think our best bet is probably either the Cage Trap or a Blazing Torch itself. I like the Cage Trap for its potential to just blow somebody out, and I think the remaining cards are just worse. There is an option to go allies here, but I have a very specific deck in mind, and green is actually kind of good for that anyway. So I'm going to go with the Cage Trap. It's not really a card that's too amazing, but people aren't going to play around the instants in this format simply because they won't know them all. I won't know them all either, but let's hope that I can make some good decisions here. So this is an expensive life drain variant. There's a Mind Sludge, which can be quite nice. And we have some white creatures. Steplings being one of the most aggressive creatures you can draft, basically. And then there is Soaring Sea Cliff, which is one of the cards in the common cycle that has an enters to the battlefield triggered ability when you play it. So overall, we are going to pick a card of a second color here. I think it could be Sea Cliff or Steplings. Don't really like the black cards too much, although Mind Sludge has some potential. I think Steplings is actually the best here. My plan is to pick up landfall creatures very aggressively, and Steplings, while not being the greatest, is a 1-drop and is going to be quite good. So here we have some blue spells. Ether Figment is actually quite nice. It's basically a 3/3 unblockable for 5. I think we might just take that. What else do we have? We have a Mountain Walker for 2. That's good. And then some more, well, not too amazing creatures. Going with the most powerful card here. 2/1 Mountain Walk for 2 is fine, but I like to go over the top. And unblockable 3/3s are certainly good enough. This is an ally that deals damage to flyers, but it's only good if you have a lot of them, so don't think that's what we want to be doing. The remaining cards aren't too great. We haven't really gotten much signals on where to go. I'm actually tempted to just pick the Hagra Crocodile because it has landfall. It can't block though, so it's kind of a bummer. Shoal Serpent isn't the best simply because it costs 6. This is a very aggressive format, as you have to know, so I'm actually going to go with the Crocodile simply because I think it's the best card, yeah. Next up, we have a Frontier Guide that searches for basic lands for 4 mana. And there's some other sweet cards. Crest for the Gravelord can make a 5/5. And Grazing Gladeheart is pretty insane because it helps you to raise all the aggro decks. And as I said, we are trying to build a landfall deck. So I think Gladeheart is actually better than Frontier Guide. Frontier Guide does give us more triggers for landfall and ramps us, but the Gladeheart is simply the better card, I feel. It's also a good signal and I don't want to pass it. Here it looks like at least green is open, although this Omara Raptor is one of the best allies as far as I can remember. It's basically a 2/2 flyer when it comes into play, and then it becomes stronger with every ally. So you can easily have 3/3 flyers beating down on turn 4. I think the Raptor is one option and Ornreef Recluse is the alternative. It does give us some protection against flyers and it has kicker. We also don't know if we are going to be in blue or not, but we have some tendency to be green at this point. I think the Recluse is sufficiently close in power level to the Raptor that we can do that, although it kind of hurts to pass the Raptor at this point. This is a great pack with a Territorial Baloth still in the pack with a landfall. I'd also turn Timber Grove to give a creature +1/+1. I think the Baloth has to be the pick here. 5 mana 4/4 and it's a 6/6 on offense. Yeah, that's a pretty easy pick if we want to stick to the green cards basically. This is the pack we opened. There's a Hedron Scrabbler, which isn't amazing, but it is a 2-drop that can block some of the Intimidate guys in the format. And the alternative is Timbermaw Larva, which gets stronger for every forest we control. Yeah, I kind of like that better than the small landfall creature. It is pretty bad on defense, so I'm not even sure if we are going to run it in the main deck, but that also depends on how many forests we are going to run in the end. Here we have a 3/3 Forest Walker for 5. Alternatively, we can pick up another blue card, but I'm not really that interested in expensive 5-drops either way. So yeah, the question is if I would even play the 3/3 Forest Walk in this deck. Probably not in the main deck, but the Ruin Drake could easily make the main deck, so I'm going to pick that. Here I'm going to pick up Soaring Sea Cliff as a way to give a creature flying. And yeah, I guess Shoal Serpent is better than the Archer. The Archer would be a good sideboard card against 1 toughness flyers. Yeah, that's actually better. And we are definitely green, and Shoal Serpent isn't a card that we should have any trouble to get. Okay, let's see what the second pack offers us. We open up a Terra Stomper, which is just an 8/8 trample for 6, which is pretty amazing. I think we should probably pick that. There are some more of the good blue cards, basically a Looter and another Raptor, but we passed on the first Raptor, which might have been a mistake, but in my strategy the Terra Stomper is actually pretty amazing. It's one of the best 6-drops I can remember in Limited, so I think that's an easy pickup. And here we have quite a lot of good cards. Kazandu Blademaster is one of the best allies. Colony Gem can be good if you have the right deck for it. But I think we need another Gladeheart here. Larva is good, but we might even table it. And the Gladeheart just gives us a very good matchup against aggressive strategies. Here, yeah, another Mind Sludge. So if we play against black, we should keep in mind that there's at least 2 Mind Sludges in the draft. I believe the first one was Foil, which just does give us some extra information. Here, there's a Burst Lightning, and we don't have a second color yet, so we might actually pick that, but I think we're just going to go with Timbermaw Larva. It is our second one, and that pulls us further towards a very heavy green deck, and we could actually end up mono green if we pick up enough artifacts to get to enough playables. Next we have Feast of Blood that destroys an arbitrary creature, but sadly only if you control 2 vampires. Considering the cards we have available here, we could put Savage Silhouette on one of our creatures. It's actually pretty nice on Gladeheart or Larva, but I don't think that's what we want to be doing. There's also Merfolk Sea Stalkers, and if you play just a few blue cards, that's certainly one of the best. Not only a tapper, but one which you can activate multiple times if you have more than, if you have 6 or more mana. So I think that's a very, very powerful card, which I'm happy to pick up. So I guess we can hide the white and black for now, and then see where things are going. This is a pretty weak pack for us. There is a Kraken Hatchling to block in the early game, and this is a very aggressive format, but I think we can do better than that. There's also a Turn Timber Grove, and I think I'm just going to take that. It's not a forest for the Larva, but I like having these effects in my deck to mess with the opponent's combat math. And if we can pick up some Walking Atlas, then it's actually going to be an instant combat trick. That doesn't cost us a spell slot. Here we have a Nissa's Chosen, a 2/3 for 2, and considering that we are very heavy black, that would be a very viable card to pick. Alternatives are Turn Timber Growth number 2 and another Ether Figment, which I said I like, but of course it isn't amazing on turn 2, just being a 1/1 basically. So given that we don't have any 2-drops yet, it might just be correct to pick up Nissa's Chosen here. It is a very efficient 2-drop, so I'm not unhappy to pick it here. And this looks like we can get a second Recluse, and that's certainly better than Hedron Scrabbler. There's also Primal Bellow, which is pretty good in the deck we're trying to draft, but Orange Reef Recluse is just better than any Giant Growth effect can ever be. That's a second Sea Stalkers, which is pretty amazing. I'm just going to take that without questioning this pick at all. We have double Sea Stalkers, double Recluse, so both flyers and non-flyers should be easily containable. I believe I'm going to pick up the Gorger here. Teetering Peaks isn't a card I want to splash, so to speak. I don't want to have off-color Teetering Peaks because they don't pump toughness, and the Gorger might theoretically make it in. It's better than Troll Serpent for what it's worth. So here we don't have to worry about Cliff Threader because we aren't playing any mountains ourselves. We have a Lethargy Trap already, so yeah, it's questionable if you even play that one. I'm going to pick up Paralyzing Grasp, maybe only for the sideboard, but who knows. I'm going to take out the Mind Sash rather than pick up another Troll Serpent, which we aren't going to play. Beast Hound is a playable card, but this format is very tempo heavy, so I'd rather not waste time with cards like that. And who knows, Call of Gales does combo with the Recluses and maybe the Archer. We also have Soaring Seacliff to give a creature flying, if that ever comes up. I just think that searching our library for a trap card isn't going to be too amazing. Hopefully we won't have to play that, but there's worse cards. In a format with a lot of aggressive X1 creatures, you can actually play a card like Call of Gales. It also blocks Welkin Turn if... well, it doesn't block it itself, but it helps to deal with Welkin Turn and some of the aggressive flyers. Here we go with World Wake, and sadly we didn't open Jace the Mind Sculptor. It's only a Terastodon, which does cost 8. 8 isn't out of the question for the deck we're trying to draft, but I'm not going to first pick it. There's probably somebody who picks it up because he likes it as a rare, even though it's not worth much. So my whole strategy basically depends on picking up Walking Atlas, and the thing is that most of the times you can be pretty safe to table it, but if you don't, then everything just falls into pieces. Well, basically the whole plan doesn't work out. So it's either Walking Atlas here or a card like Enclave Elite, which is basically a multi-kicker Island Walker, which can actually pose a problem for us, but like I said, it's so important to have these constructs here that I'm going to take it, try to get as many as I can, maybe wheel the Terastodon and play it, but we'll see about that. Next up, I don't recall all these cards, so that's a 3/1 protection from lands, which just does sound pretty good. There's a smaller, but I'm not looking to splash anything currently. Also, Quicksand could provide a nice land-based trick, and we might wheel that. Actually, people aren't too keen on that. Gnarled Pack is another card that's very intriguing. It is a 2-drop, 2-mana 2/2, but then it's also a Hill Giant and also a 6-mana 4/4 and so on. So Gnarled Pack is actually pretty good. I think that Horizon Drake is a little better, but not by far. I think we pick the Drake here, but it's really close, especially because the Drake is also double blue. There's a lot of cards that turn lands into creatures in this format, so protection from lands is actually very relevant. So here we have basically the same decision again, Pack versus Drake. There's also the Quicksand, and another Enclave Elite. So the question is it still Horizon Drake or is it the pack this time around? I still think that we can go with the Drake. It might be a bit greedy, but we aren't dying on turn 2 basically, and then I'd rather have the 3-drop rather than an efficient creature all around. So there's another Atlas, and the card you want to combine with the Atlas is actually Hedron Rover, as it's basically an instant 4/4. You're threatening to make it a 4/4 whenever you have an Atlas untapped. There's also a Bestial Menace, so there's quite a lot of good cards in this pack. Now, we are going to see 4 cards out of this pack return, and we can't be certain that it's going to be Walking Atlas. We just don't know how people are drafting this format and what they are picking. So even though there are some cards that are just vastly superior, I'm just going to go with the Atlas, hoping that I still wield something, but if I don't, then at least I have the Atlas that makes my deck. Leatherback Baloth looks like a card that we can easily support, and that should be very good for us. I also like to pick up the Sigiri Step to give a creature protection from a color at instant speed, but a 3 mana 4/5, even if it costs 4 mana, potentially is just too good to pass. There's also a Banisher for 5, which does come with a bounce effect, and now that we have 2 Atlases, we can actually hope to just play this very early, but I think the Baloth is stronger overall. Here, there's a Vin Zendikon. You can make a land into a 2/2 flyer, a 2/1 Reach Spider, which is a fine 2-drop, I guess. But there's also a Treasure Hunt, and I'm just going to take that. You get lands until you hit a spell, basically. So if you can make good use of lands, which we can usually in this kind of deck, then Treasure Hunt is actually a very good card. It also helps after mulligans and so on. Here there's multiple cards we are very interested in. Groundswell is basically a +4/+4 combo trick. Howling Map Depths isn't amazing if you can't shuffle. And then there's Mysteries of the Deep, which draws 3 when you play the land this turn. And that also works with Walking Atlas, so you can even draw 3 end of turn. I'm definitely going to pick that. It's a card that the Walking Atlas deck certainly needs. Here we have Pilgrim's Eye, 3 mana 1/1 that comes with a basic land. And the other card we could pick up is Spell Contortion, basically a very bad cryptic command if you want. I'm going to go with Pilgrim's Eye here. Our mana is good, but not incredibly amazing, so yeah. Terrastodon Wield, I think it's sufficiently stronger than the Elite, and we have a reasonable shot at reaching 8 mana with the Treasure Hunt we picked up and the Pilgrim's Eye, so I'm thrilled to see that. Another Enclave Elite, we might just want to sideboard these, but Multi-Kicker is very good too in land-heavy decks. We could also pick Nature's Claim, but don't recall that being all that necessary. Also, Enclave is very good against us, so I'm just going to pick these for the blue matchups, basically. And of course, we are going to have we are basically going to have far too many playables, but I think it's not too difficult to build this into a good game 1 deck and then see from there. The cover could provide troublesome. There's also Feral Contest, which I guess is playable sometimes. I'm just going to take the outcome, not to play it, but just to hate it. So here there's a land destruction spell and the Smoldering Spires, which means I can pick a sweet full art basic. And we have the Vin Zendikon. Maybe we want to play that. I'm not too sure. So the way that the deck building goes is that you add all the Walking Atlas you have and then continue from there. We have quite a lot of good cards, so we can be very picky about what we want to play. Not even sure about some of these cards. And we do have quite a lot of good late game cards as well, so we probably don't need another 6-drop apart from the Terra Stomper, especially when we are also playing Terrastodon. Now, one of the main decisions that we are going to face is how we want to play with regards to Timbermore Larva. Timbermore Larva is pretty insane, so if we ramp it out on turn 3 with Walking Atlas and then start attacking, it's just going to take huge chunks out of our opponent's life total. It is pretty bad on defense though, so there's definitely a trade-off there. Now, our curve looks fine. Let's sort this a little bit and see where we are going. Now, I'm pretty sure that this deck doesn't have to be aggressive to be successful, but it certainly doesn't help either. It doesn't hurt either. Sorry about that. So, as you can see, this deck doesn't really have removal in the, well, neither in the traditional sense nor at all, basically. So, we do need to win with our creatures. But that shouldn't be a big problem when you have cards like Recluse, Sea Stalkers, and these late game threats. So I'm pretty light on spells, which is compensated a bit by the fact that Seacliff and Growth act as virtual spells. But yeah, that's a weakness of this draft so far, basically. I think that we want both Larvas in there. It's sufficiently good with 2 Walking Atlas to warrant an inclusion, and beating down while the remaining cards in our deck control the board is a pretty good strategy, I feel like. Now, the Horizon Drakes have 2 problems. They cost double blue, which is bad for our mana base, and playing more islands makes the Larva and the Baloth worse at the same time. So one option in this deck is to actually not play the Horizon Drakes, even though we picked them up very early, simply because they're going to make our deck less consistent. And with the Larva, we probably don't need the Drakes to actually deliver the beatdown. So that only makes sense if we can get a good mana base going without the Drakes. Basically, I'm thinking of something around 6 blue sources for 1, 2, 3, 4 blue spells. Maybe another blue spell from the cards that are currently in the sideboard. So, and then we still have to decide if those are better than one of the green spells, the Vastwood Gorger, for example, very playable when you have the Atlas, and another 6-drop certainly wouldn't hurt. So I'm also looking at Paralyzing Grasp as a way to just deal with troublesome permanents and evasive creatures, because we are very lacking in that regard. So overall, maybe we just cut 1 Horizon Drake and just risk having an uncastable Drake in our hand at some point, simply because a 3/1 protection from land creature is so good, and that would actually be a viable option. We also have Pilgrim's Eye to get more islands, and we are going to play a lot of lands, so maybe it isn't going to be a problem at all. I'm not going to play the Island Walkers main deck. I could play Vastwood Gorger. I think that's probably the best card. Skyrune Drake seems worse than the Figment, so, and Vincenticon is much worse also. I think these 3 cards are the cards that we could be considering. And the question is if they can ever add more to our deck than the Horizon Drake. So one card that could do that is Vastwood Gorger. It has the potential to just be in play pretty early. It's a 5/6, which is very reasonable. And it is going to provide a good clock in conjunction with the other cards we have. So playing the Gorger and cutting 1 Drake might be what this deck wants, and then we can go with the 6 blue sources, or 6 or 7 blue sources with 1 Drake, which might become a late game spell, but it can still easily be cast on turn 3 if things go right. It doesn't work well with Chosen and Baloth, of course, but I think it's still better, probably better than the Figment, although I'm not sure about that. Given that the Figment is single blue and can be cast on turn 2 as well, that might actually be the change we want to make. And then if we see that our opponent has creatures, man lands, and creatures that turn into lands, then we can reconsider. I kind of like that. The Figment is fine. It's a 5 mana 3/3 unblockable, so I think we should probably play that. So that leaves us with 19 lands, which is probably something you haven't heard of, and we might just flood horribly, but we have a plan at least. We can use our extra mana very efficiently. If you look at all these cards, Landfall, the 2 Sea Stalkers, the Larva, the Recluses, the Glade Hearts, there's basically not a single card that's actually bad when we draw too much lands. So that's why we can do that in Zendikar Worldwake. Now, this gives us 2 green sources and 1 blue source, and another 5 islands gives us 6 blue sources, and then we have 11 plus 2, 13 green sources, which I like with Chosen, Baloth, especially Baloth, but also Terra Stomper. Might be possible that we are lacking blue at some point. We do need a second blue for the Sea Stalkers, but that's some late game considerations, and we also have Pilgrim's Eye and Treasure Hunt to find us some extra land. So as long as we have green in our opening hand, we should actually be fine. Okay, very interesting. Walking Atlas deck, let's see how it goes.